everyone, and welcome to Win, a show where we interview champions and trailblazers and ask questions to uncover and discover their championship traits for succeeding in sports, work, and life. I'm Lee Elias, that's JB Spizzo, and we are joined today by former professional baseball player, two-time Ironman finisher, business coach, and founder of the Complete Game coaching program, Andy Neary. And as we dive into Andy's life today, you're going to find that no matter the arena, no matter the playing field, he was able to draw on his experience as an athlete to break through adversity and succeed. And in addition to being an achiever, Andy is also the host of the Bulldog Sessions, a podcast dedicated to helping athletes and business professionals make the successful transition to the next chapter of their life. Go check that out. He is also the contributing author on the Amazon bestseller, Breaking Through the Status Quo. Make sure you check that out. But above all, Andy, we're excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, let's do this. I'm excited. Anytime I can get on and have a conversation about sports, it's a good day.
See, I agree with you. This is the life, right? Like, what are we talking
I actually want
to
start a podcast like where we just riff about sport. Here's the thing. We're all guys on this episode. We can rattle off the most dumb sports stats from 20 years ago. I guarantee it.
So true. It's so much more true. And I do that at the office all the time, and people give me looks. I'm lucky to be in a line of work now where I do that. People are like, oh, that's interesting. That's all I need. Just somebody to go, yes, your time was not completely wasted knowing this obscure scat from 1992. That's the way to do it. But Andy, look, this is your time today. If you want to make another podcast with us, I have a feeling the audience is going to love that. But this is where I want to start. Okay. On all of your marketing material, your website, everywhere, you're self-described as an undersized athlete, that you were an undersized athlete. So I want to start there because I'm sure that we have a lot of coaches and players that subscribe to that, feel that way. And they're just told you're too small to make it. Right. So my first question, how did you break through that messaging and get to pro baseball?
Yeah, great question. It's funny. I'll tell about my seventh or eighth grade. I was a chubby kid, actually, overweight a little bit. They called it, what did we call it back then? Husky. But when I got into high school, lost all the weight, just naturally grew out of it. But by the time I was a senior, I was 5'9", 145 pounds. I was not a big kid. And I knew I had a chance to play college baseball at the collegiate level. And it's interesting. I share this story a lot because you asked about how you overcome it. Going into my senior season in high school, I'd only accepted one scholarship offer, had one offer, accepted it to Division II Winona State University in Minnesota. And it was late in my senior year that I got the offer from UW-Milwaukee, where I ultimately landed. But the reason I felt I was able to elevate myself to collegiate ball and then to pro ball as a 5'9" pitcher, and I did not throw 100 miles an hour like they do today. Right. I just outworked the competition.
Love it.
That's that. It's the work. I think any athlete will tell you who's been successful on and off the field, the secret sauce is the work you put in when no one's watching.
And I want to dive into that real quick. And JB, I know you do too. I'm in a similar situation where I played hockey, and it was called the Neanderthal era, where if you weren't 6'5" and 220, you had no shot. And I had a cup of coffee in the minors, but the key is this, I went further than anybody thought I would, right? I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm trying to share a message here. And I just look back on that now, and people say, well, how did you keep going? Because I just kept saying to myself, well, why not? Why would I not keep going? Right? Someone's got to do it. And I just had this belief system of, no, I'm just going to work harder than everybody else that I meet. And I did, right? And with the attitude of someone out there still working harder than me. And I still work that way, right? So for the young coaches, young athletes out there, your internal dialogue is insanely, not a little bit, it's insanely important. And if you're getting negative messages, and again, I was blessed. I had mostly positive messages in my head. And I realize now how lucky I was to have that, because not everybody has that. But if you're having negative messages in your head, you can flip this to what Andy's talking about, right? It takes some practice, takes some time, and understanding present moment awareness and a lot of other things that we talk about on this show. But Andy, I just want to ask you about that, because you clearly had the right thought process. And I'm sure there were times you had doubts. I'm sure there was times you had negative messages, but you moved them aside and pushed through, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you, my journey from high school to college to pro balls, it was a roller coaster, because my first 2 years at UWM were not good. Talk about negative influences. At that time, the UWM baseball program wasn't thought as a good program. I remember having students at the university say, "Oh, we have a baseball program." And the influences from the upperclassmen at that time, no offense, weren't good. Right. It was negative. And by the time my sophomore year rolled around, I wanted to transfer. I wanted to quit. Like, I just was done. And I took a big shift between my sophomore and junior year. I was actually named one of the captains, where for me that meant, okay, dude, get your crap together. Like
Right.
get together. You have to show up now. You have to be a leader. And that's really where I started diving in, putting in the work off the field, hitting the weight room, working on my craft as a pitcher, doing all the things it was going to take to show up consistent every single day. Now, what's interesting is when I got to pro baseball, people will think, well, you're 5'9", 100, at that point, 170 pounds, overcoming the odds. Wasn't it a great story? No, I actually failed in pro ball, because when I got to pro ball, all those mindset limitations came back.
Right.
I feared judgment, I feared comparison, and I feared failure. I didn't think I belonged.
Yeah, you can't play that way.
Not when you're undersized, not when
Right.
you're the free agent, not the high draft pick.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly it. Andy, I love your story, and working in pro sports, I'll tell you, it's the same thing. The first round picks always get a chance. The 7th round pick or free agent gets one chance, and a lot of times those are the stigmas put on it, right? Because they want to give that first round pick a chance, because they don't want to be like, well, we made a mistake.
Right.
we
Right.
we made a mistake, and I just look at. I'll give an example in the NHL. Mackenzie Weegar, he just scored he's a defenseman, scored his 100th point. He was a 7th round pick,
Right.
Chubby kid, but they thought he had some talent, got his act together. Now he's making, $5 million a year, and he's going to play in the NHL a long time. I think that's so important for that. I just want to go back to what you said about doing the work in the dark places. I think sometimes when athletes, business professionals, it's like, hey boss, this is what I'm doing. Hey coach, this is what I'm doing.
Right.
Just go do it. Sidney Crosby, that one season in the off season, took like 10,000 face-offs because he wanted to get his face-offs better. You see obviously the Last Dance, Jordan and, Brady and everybody else. They're doing the work in the dark places. I think that's important for young coaches, young athletes to know. Just go do it. Work at it.
I couldn't agree more, JB.
You don't have to Snapchat it. You don't have to Instagram it. Just do it. Go ahead.
That's actually where I was going. One of the things that irritates me sometimes is when I see people post like they've worked out for a week. Look at me, I'm hitting the gym. And all of a sudden now they're the expert.
Right.
And I sit there when I see those kind of posts and I say, you know what, do that every day for 3 years and then call me.
Right. With no guarantee of success.
Yeah.
That's the other side of it too, right? I think the only time I've seen people, Instagram or post something that I'm like, okay, I get this, is to keep themselves accountable, right? I have seen some people, they're doing like a 70-day challenge and they're posting because they're keeping themselves accountable with their friends and they're getting a lot of support. But no, yeah, if you're a young athlete, keep in mind, all three of us, we didn't have social media growing up, right? We didn't have a way to film.
Thank God.
Yeah, I agree with you, JB. Look, there's some benefits to it, but there's a lot more drawbacks, I think. As I have to say, as the show is all over social media. No, but joking aside, look, it's also a mind thing. I'm going to go back to the mind thing again. There are so many days in your career where you wake up going, I just don't want to do it today.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I've had that, outside having a fever or something like that. The ones that succeed or get further still get up. They still do it. They put the time in, because it comes down to, and I'd love both your thoughts on this from a military perspective and a pro athlete perspective, the consistency, right? And it's not a sometime thing. If you want to make it, you want to be competitive, it's an all the time thing. We've talked about this with pro athletes before, Andy, on this show. The competitive net level it takes to make it in pro sports, it's an all the time competitive thing. You have to practice and be on it all the time in a healthy way. I do have to say that. Right? Like, sometimes you get into gambling and other things that can take an unhealthy obsession, but the days you don't want to do it, it's raining outside, it's cold outside, I just don't feel like it. The ones that still do it are the ones that tend to succeed. And that's not just in sport.
Yeah. All three of us are coaches, right? Whether it's
Right.
athletes or business professionals. And I can guarantee we all agree that the number one reason people don't succeed is they cannot show up consistently every day.
Right.
When I think of the military, the first word that comes to mind is discipline, right?
Right.
Even like when I make my bed in the morning, I literally, you guys will laugh. When I get up and I forget to do it, I'm like, man, what would somebody in the military think of me right now?
Well, we can answer that question today.
What the hell's your problem?
But it's that inability to not show up. I deal, I mainly coach insurance advisors and agencies today, because that's my industry I've been in, and I see it. Anybody can show up for a day. Anybody can show up for a week. Heck, anybody can show up for a month.
Right.
But give me the person who's willing to show up every single day, all year, every year. And here's where it was my aha moment in business. And it was when I started this coaching business. Just like an athlete, when I realized that today I can get my butt kicked, there could be not a thing that goes right today. And when I get done, and I love it because I know tomorrow I get to wake up and do it all over again. And tomorrow I could throw the no-hitter, quote unquote. That's when life gets fun. That's when you're willing to show up every day. One of my favorite quotes of all time comes from the book, The One Thing. And he says, Gary Keller, the author, says, the reason most people do not succeed, is because they cannot handle the monotony of success. It's boring.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's the mundanity of success right there. And you're a professional athlete. I love the fact that you're a 2-time Ironman finisher, because anybody that's done an Ironman or done a marathon, you want to talk about the grind on the mind. I mean, physically, it's so funny because years ago, like with no training, a friend of mine's like, "You want to run a half marathon?" I'm like, "Sure," and I'm like, like mile 8, I'm like, whoa. and I can make my body make it, but you got to dial the mind in.
Right. And
Andy, talk about that, how you do that from being a professional athlete to a business professional, but the Ironman's no joke.
Yeah, people don't often talk about this. Most people know Ironman's 3 sports, right? Swimming, bike, run. They forget there's a 4th, mental. Like the mental side of this is as important as the 3 sports you're actually doing. And you're right, JB. There's not a triathlete who's done an Ironman that hasn't hit a point in that race that says, I can't go on. If people don't and by the way, if you're not familiar with what an Ironman is, you start at 7 a.m. in the morning and you have till midnight to finish. So think about that. It's going to be a long day. and I think it's that the way you break it down, because at the end of the day, you're going 140.6 miles between the swim, bike, and run. And you just literally have to break it down into 5, 10-mile chunks.
Right.
And when you get into the marathon at the end, 1-mile chunks. Heck, it could be half-mile chunks.
Could be the next step.
It could be, or the next water station. That was one of my strategies in my first one, was just water station to water station in the run. Once you make it on the run, it's water station to water station. And I think that's how we as athletes or in business have to go at life, one day at a time.
Right.
Heck, it could be 1 hour at a time.
If you survive to swim without getting kicked or drowned, I mean, people don't realize how difficult that swim is. That's the killer. I think if you get out of the swim, you got a chance.
Well, and you're right, JB. And I think they've changed the rules a little bit where it's now they start 2 people at a time or something like that. But back when I did it a decade ago, it was a mass start, 2,000 people ready to go. And for the first half mile, it's a war in the water.
Yeah.
You could get kicked in the nose. Yeah, and I think when you realize that you're literally in this battle in the water, you can't see the bottom. I know where I did Ironman Wisconsin. So where we swam, probably 40, 50 feet deep. Right. Can't see the bottom. You have thousands of people around you. You're literally swimming and scooping bodies to get out of your way. It's insane. It's a mental battle for sure.
There's a reason they don't do that in the Hudson River, I'm guessing. Saying that over on the East Coast. Yeah. No, look, Ironman competitions are amazing. Let's talk about that moment, though. You alluded to it. Every athlete that does it, they hit the wall at some point, right? Can you slow time down for us, Andy? Can you walk us through what is the thought? Is it's okay, I can't go on. Walk us through that moment and the breakthrough. What do you say to yourself to get through that moment? And then talk about the result as well, because we see people finishing these with that look. Everybody knows that look of, oh my God, I did it, right? But I want to know what that is like as well, because we see it, but we don't. There's no way that picture is encapsulating what's actually going on in your brain.
I wish I could give you a good answer a decade ago, but back then mentally, I probably wasn't. I still had the mindset limitations that I had back in pro bowl.
Right.
Today, if I were to do that Ironman again, and it's a quote, it's a phrase I tell myself a lot when things don't feel good, whether it's working out, business. It's a quote I got from my coach. And that's simply, I just tell myself, we do hard things. When things get tough, yeah, we do hard things. That's what we do. And I know that sounds simple. Like that's all you say. It works.
It
we
is
do hard
simple.
Things.
This is what I want to say to our audience. And JB, look, Andy and I will both agree here. In your line of work, your profession, you do hard things, right? To say the least. But what I find is this, and there's two messages here I want to bring to the athletes, and I'd love your guys' thoughts on this. One is this: like I've been practicing present moment awareness for about a decade now. All right. And if there's anything I've realized, it's you have to keep practicing it. But where I started and where I am now is two totally different places. So young athletes, young coaches, you should give yourself permission to understand that this is a journey. And I love that you said, you know what? I wasn't in the right place mentally then. That's a vulnerable statement. And I really appreciate it because young coaches and athletes need to understand it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not be there as long as you're on the path to get there, right? We do hard things. That's part of it mentally. It's not easy to get yourself to a mental place and you will fall out of it. You 100%, even when you have present moment awareness, you're going to lose it. It's hard to do. And JB, let me turn to you too, again, because again, we don't have to get into details, but the line of work you have in the military, I mean, there's no choice, right? So love your perspective on that.
No, and I think it's a lot of the things that, both of you are saying, part of it in the military and, surviving, lasting, 26 years in the military for me was, you had to do the grind every day, but you had to learn to love the grind.
Right.
You had to learn to be like, all right, this is it. I'm going to outgrind you a little bit today. Now, of course, your experience comes in, like Andy, when you did your second Ironman, you had some experience from the first one. You're like, all right, I'll tailor that.
I'm going to get kicked in the face today.
I'm going to get kicked in the face. But I think that's part of it is it's, loving the battle. And I don't mean battle in like conflict, like, war. That's not what I'm talking about. It's showing up every single day saying, you know what, today's a competition. Okay. Today's a competition and I have to bring the best version of myself. Right. And it might not always be 100%, but it's part of that. It's part of that showing that. Andy, I wanted to ask you, you said it initially, I'm big when I work with, college teams, even pro teams. I'm not a rite of passage guy, freshmen, clean up the water bottles, I'm not that. And I know that there's a lot of rite of passage. Right. And, I remember even in a pro locker room, and the man I'm talking about, is going to the Hockey Hall of Fame, and they were in line to eat, and a rookie was ahead of him, and he was like, "Get behind me, Rook!" And I just saw it like, well, first off, they're not going to run out of any food in an NHL, cafeteria. They're not going to run out of food. Number one, and he makes his kid eat behind him, and sends him back line. So later on, I had a coffee with that guy, with the veteran. And I was like, hey, why'd you do that to that young guy? And he's like, well, that's what they did to me. I'm like, can he help you win? He's like, yeah, he's very talented. I'm like, then why not bring him into the fold? Right. Like, in the military, we had a selection process to come into the Ranger Regiment, come into the Rangers. And then as soon as the new guys would come in, there are the sergeants reselecting him. And I'm like, what are you doing? He passed selection. I need his gun in the fight. Let's go. And I think sometimes we get this rite of passage system. Now, sure, does a freshman pick his locker? Maybe not. But I think we have to understand that, when we bring people into the group, obviously when you were a freshman and sophomore, those seniors and juniors were like, uh-oh, they were worried about you. That's why they were pushing you down. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you made me think of something when you said what you just said about the hockey team. If we're all reading the professional development, personal development books, shouldn't the captain eat last?
Right, 100%.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
What is the book? Leaders Eat Last. Right.
Leaders
There's actually a book.
Last.
Yeah.
Simon Sinek. He stole that from the military.
He totally stole that from the military.
And I'll tell you why in the military that it's that way, because there are times that you run out of food. You're in a field environment, you run out of food. So guess what? I'm a sergeant major. I can miss a meal, but that 19-year-old machine gunner, that kid's got to eat.
You need him at the top.
That kid's got to eat. I can miss a meal. Yep. And so that's the whole thought process of Leaders Eat Last. And, sometimes it's not the way. And again, in pro sports, I would laugh because they're not running out of food. So
no, they're not running out of food. And,
exactly.
and I think on the flip side though, and you're seeing this, we've talked about, it's kind of full circle because of social media and the exposure these kids can get in high school now. I do believe there's some athletes who come in as freshmen with a little sense of entitlement.
Totally agree with that too.
Because they've been, let's be honest, I'm going to say it. So many high school athletes are overhyped these days because of the exposure.
Sure.
Right.
You have one good exposure camp, and all of a sudden now you're the hot recruit because you had a good day or two camp. So you coming in as that freshman though, you have to come in with that mindset that I know I'm here to prove myself.
Yeah.
I don't expect them, I don't want them to haze me and do all that, but at the same time, it's like, hey, you're here to prove yourself. Mm-hmm. So if the upperclassmen have that ability to say, hey, he's one of us, she's one of us. But that freshman comes in also knowing, I know I got to bust my tail to prove myself. That team is going to win a lot of championships.
Andy, one of the things I do in team development, and again, I work with from the team aspect, not so much the individual athlete aspect, is I'm not in any way for hazing rituals or, like JB said, freshmen do the water bottles. That's how it's always been.
It's ridiculous.
But it's all about how it's presented. Right. So with one of the teams I worked with, we needed a new locker room. I had the team come in and actually help build the locker room. Right. Because I'm trying to create some accountability and some ownership over that stuff. So one of the things I suggested was freshmen should paint this room when they come in every year to make it theirs. Right. Or with the water bottles, explaining, and JB talked about the water bottles. It's not a hazing. This is part of our organization. Freshmen do it, and we're going to do it for the rest of the team. And it's like that every year because this teaches accountability. And in an inadvertent way, JB too, that, hey, listen, you got to earn your way here, but it's all about how it's presented. Right. I'm also a big fan of leaders eat last. It's so important to me. And JB, you said this a minute ago. I love it. I need your gun in the fight. I mean, that's a great quote, man. Like, that's exactly how you should look at it, right? You need these people to push forward. And
that kid's got enough stress going on as it is.
Totally.
I totally agree. And it's so funny because you tell a college team that, you tell a pro team that, and at the end of the day, I say, listen, winners get jobs. So if you win, you're good. I mean, listen, you both know it. Andy, you've seen it firsthand. Lee, you've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. A guy's playing in the NHL on his 15th year. He's not really that good, but he's been on winning teams. Right. So what do? He gets a contract, right? Winners get jobs. Right. So wouldn't you rather be a part of a winning organization? And it takes that.
And that culture, it needs to be built, and not enough teams are building it. So Andy, before we transition kind of the second half,
I wanted to say something about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, always.
It's something I think about a lot, and I'm actually going to call out some pro athletes here because
go for it. This is the juicy side of the episode.
Who am I? Think about two examples. I actually hear more people but like say they're not fans of Tom Brady. The man has been in Super Bowls for half of his career.
Yes.
Do you think he knows what it means to win? Now, is he the most talented? He's not. But what he does know how to do is put himself in the best position to win. And I think as coaches, that's our job. I tell people, when I coach you, I'm not giving you any secret sauce saying, if you do this, you'll win. I'm going to help you put yourself in the best position to win.
Right.
Now, on the flip side, this is a guy that I thought about as I saw Sports Center the other day. Russell Westbrook. Talented as any basketball player in the NBA. Sorry, he's not a winner. Find me a team he's been on that's actually winning. He's now on the LA Lakers, and they're not winning.
Yeah.
But people want to give these guys chances. And like at some point you realize some guys understand, or women understand what it takes to win. Some don't.
Right. I'll tell you something funny about Brady, because we've said it on the show before. I'm in Philadelphia. I'm an Eagles fan, right? And I've had plenty of reason to love and hate that guy throughout his career, but I'm at a point with him now, and I'm older and more mature too. I tell anyone who gives him crap, like, you need to sit down and enjoy what he has left in this game, because you're not just seeing the greatest of all time in football. I mean, you're seeing one of the greatest winners in the history of this country in sport, right? And like, it's funny, I'll say this, they played the Eagles in the first round of the playoffs this year. It's 2022, if anybody's listening in the future. But I remember Eagles fans like, yeah, no, we got his number. He's afraid of us. I said, this guy's not, they're going to kill us. This guy is not afraid of anybody. He's literally beaten all 32 teams in the league. Like he's going to be calm, collected, and it's exactly as predicted.
Yeah.
Right. So what I say, Andy, to build on that is don't rip. If you find yourself ripping someone like Tom Brady, maybe take a second step and say, wow, what's that guy doing to win? Because I'll tell you what, success leaves clues, and that guy's clues are all over the place about how he succeeds in football and in life. All right. And it's actually a good transition point, Andy. I have one quick question, because he's starting to transition to business after football. You can see it with his new clothing line and his sunglasses and everything he does. Yeah. But one thing I have to ask you before, because we've got about 10 minutes left, is with all of the work you did, baseball, Ironman, everything, I think it's always important that we start saying this, that you didn't do it alone. All right. Like, again, we always talk on the show about the great moments, but the truth is no one succeeds by themselves. So who are the few influential people in your life that were there that helped you push through those barriers? Because again, we do focus on the great moment, but even Tom Brady, we talk about him, didn't do it alone. And he'll be the first to say that.
Yep. First, I would tell you I was blessed growing up. My dad was the high school coach in the town I grew up in. So I played for him in high school. So I had a mentor from a baseball standpoint early on, which was, you can never replace that. I'll tell you, once I got out of college, for a good 7 to 10 years, I didn't have the mentors I needed. That's why my business career was not a success.
Right.
And the first real mentor that I would attribute to in my business career would be a gentleman by the name of Dan Bergwald. I went to work for him. I was literally about ready to quit the insurance industry. He hired me, taught me this whole new way to do things and the ways to think, and he really rejuvenated my career. And then from there, here's the key. From there, every mentor I had, I sought. So I'll never forget, Amy and I moved out to Colorado. I had a mentor. Again, by the way, mentors are people, you don't have to meet them, right? It could be people dead or alive. Darren Hardy. I don't know if that name rings a bell for any of you, but I started following this gentleman named Darren Hardy. He was a mindset coach, business coach, learned from him. And then just from there, I constantly seek mentors. In fact, I have a vision board on my desk right here.
Love it.
And Amy and I do a vision board. She's better at it than I am, but we do it for every season: winter, spring, summer, fall. But on that vision board, I just came up with this idea a couple months ago. Who is sitting at my round table? Who are the people that I am going to follow based on specific areas of expertise, that when I want to get better at that area, I'm going to them? Them meaning I might watch a YouTube video from them.
Right.
And so I have a list of 5 or 6 people, whether it's health and fitness, mindset, crypto, as I'm getting into crypto investing, but just areas where I want to get better. Who's that person that has done it, and I'm going to go follow?
I want to tell everybody listening how important this is, because I know a lot of young people and athletes that say, I can't ask for help and I don't want the help. This man is telling you he actively searches for it when it's not there. That's a huge, huge lesson for this audience. And I love the way you worded it, Andy. I actually couldn't word that any better. Who's at my round table, right? Winners, and this man is a winner, whether he wants to admit it or not. Winners surround themselves with people like that. I'll give you another example. You can make a podcast and invite one of your mentors on it called Win. And he could sit here and not even know he's your mentor and act like he's not all the time, but he is. JB Spizzo, I'm talking to you. My point is this, my roundtable, how lucky am I to sit here with you today, Andy, and all the guests that we have? That's the real value of this show. Yes, we have a great, parent company in pivotalmomentsmedia.com. That's not a push, but I'm blessed to be able to sit with these people and learn. So I think that's just an amazing statement that you just made.
Let me give you a real life example. Again, go back to this roundtable concept. So I mentioned that we're starting to invest a little in crypto. I want to learn about it more, right?
Right.
Here's what blows me away about when I hear people say, I don't have the resources. I don't have the mentors. All 3 of us, when we were young, you know what we didn't have? We didn't have YouTube.
The internet.
We didn't have YouTube. Yeah. I today can go on YouTube and literally sit in an MIT course on cryptocurrency for free.
I love this. Yeah, it's true.
Like, there are no more excuses of lack of resources or mentors, because they're everywhere and they're free.
Right. Free. And this is something I learned in college. Don't ask me the question if you haven't Googled or tried to find the answer on your own. Right. That's a key thing I teach all of my athletes and all of my students is you should come to me last. Because if you're not taking the time and doing the effort to do the research, you don't really want this.
Correct.
Right? You should come to me last if you literally can't find an answer, which does happen sometimes.
Yep.
All right, Andy, we have about 5 minutes left. I want to make sure that we talk about the second half of your career and transition to the work you do today. So as we said in the open, you took your sports experience, you transferred it to business, and now you coach and help other people in business, as you alluded to. Just talk to us a few minutes about that and really the importance of how your athletic journey contributed to that. Because I think the best business people, the best teammates really are former athletes.
Well, no, you hit it. It's funny. I think about this a lot when I look at two business people that have backgrounds in two specific areas. When I know they have a background in a specific area, they're probably winners. One is military. And I know too, from a sports standpoint, if I see somebody in business and they're a former wrestler, for whatever reason, I know they're successful, because wrestling too is that's a whole different mindset. Right. But for me, here's the thing. When I was in pro baseball, I talked about failing because I feared comparison, judgment, and failure. And number one, the comparison, when you're in pro sports, especially in the minor leagues, you're getting compared by scouts every day, literally by stats. And you're getting compared against your own teammates. You're getting judged every day. And then that fear of failure, JB, you brought it up earlier. When I'm a free agent, I get one chance to that high draft pick's 9. So I can't, in my head, I'm going, I can't fail. And where I made that shift, and it took a long time, especially, it really hit me here when I started my coaching business, because it took me 41 years to finally become an entrepreneur. It's when I realized, number one, you cannot care what anybody else says, that fear of comparison or judgment. And number two, you guys know this, you fail every day. Love it. It's progress. Right. Learn from it. I talked about this. Today, you might get your butt kicked, but tomorrow you can get back and up and do it all over again. So to me, that was the biggest shift, was when I learned that I don't care what anybody else thinks about me and what I'm doing. And I absolutely love failing because it means I'm making progress. That's when everything changed.
It's a gift. It's a gift. I say people need to look at it more like a gift. That, I always say you're going to fail, so don't fear it. Like, don't fear failure. And by the way, parents listening to this show, we put that in our children more than we probably realize. That's where it stems from, right? And then society doesn't help. Like, the winners are able to break through that. Failure, as you said, is progress. Another great quote I love, Andy, is like, practice makes perfect. No, it doesn't. It makes progress. There is no perfect. You might have a perfect moment. That's not going to last. Right. JB, I want to throw it over to you for any final questions. I've been hogging the mic most of the episode today.
No, it's been great. Andy, I just love the fact that, you're out there, you're continuing to take what you've learned as an athlete, an entrepreneur, and now that you're helping others. And I think that's the biggest gift. Biggest gift is you're helping others, your round table, your executive growth network, however you want to call it. I think that's so important to be able to look at people. And the other thing I just want to mention to people about, like, mentors, they don't always have to be older than you too. You can learn a lot from people that younger than you.
Especially nowadays. Yeah.
Especially nowadays. Like, even with my children, grown children, college educated, doing great things, I learned from them. Yep. So I think that's important to keep your mind open. And the internet has done that. It's made the world a flat place, which has been a little bit better. Andy, young coaches on here, young athletes, give them a couple takeaways.
It's something we were just talking about, a quote that came to my head. I would rather be good for a very long time than great for 15 minutes.
I love it.
Let that set in.
And that's the number one. If there's 3 words that come to my mind that define my life today, it's consistency, persistency, and patience.
Love it.
I love that too. So here's my final question, building on that, because I think the answer might be similar. We talked about today, there were kind of 2 versions of you, right? There was this version of you that didn't have the mental toughness, didn't have the ability that you have today. And then there's you today. So if you could send a text or a snail mail letter back to the whatever year it was to yourself, right? What would that be to that younger version of you that needs the older version of you?
It's a quote I received from a mentor. I remember so many quotes from mentors, and it's a comment he made to me at a mastermind of his I was a part of. And it's really it was that punch in the face I needed. He looked me in the eye, and this would be in my text. And I apologize, I won't say the words. Quit being a PUSSY and start thinking bigger.
I love it. Sometimes that's what you need to hear, Andy. It's true.
I love it.
Sometimes it's what it takes.
I held myself back for far too long by thinking too small.
And you've echoed that throughout the episode with that quote by, do the hard things. You said that too. Sometimes it is that simple. We talked about it too. Well, it's never that simple. Sometimes it is just a mental shift of shut up and go do it. Stop whining and do it. And I'm going to say this. It's not all of them, but a lot of young coaches and athletes, I'm not taking myself off the hook here either, but we've grown up in an environment where whining is kind of the norm and it just doesn't lead to success.
Blaming others. That's the other one. Blaming others. Oh, it's the coach's fault. He cut me.
As a coach,
because you didn't work hard enough.
As a coach, it's your job to inspire your kids to not think that way. I'm going to say, Andy, you look like you want to say something after that.
Got another quote, you guys. I'm sorry. All these quotes are flooding in. My pitching coach in college, he's no longer with us, Todd Froworth. He actually pitched for the Phillies for a little while. He said this, and I'll never forget this. He was a high school coach before he was our pitching coach at EWM. And he had a parent come up to him in high school, and the parent was blaming him for the reason his son wasn't getting recruited because he wasn't playing his son.
Right.
And Todd looked him in the eye and he said, I just have to tell you, I don't play your son because I don't like him. I don't play your son because he's not good enough. And that blaming and shaming, and sometimes you have to realize today you might not be good enough.
Right.
But get back up tomorrow and do everything you can to try to be as good as you can be. It's that simple.
Well, and sometimes when you're told that, you do the things you need to do to get good enough. Exactly. But you got to be blunt and honest. Like that's, I always wanted my coaches to be honest. Always. If I'm not good enough, tell me. Or what do I need to improve on? But be honest. That's actually the path of least resistance, is to be blunt. Right. So, Andy, listen, we're out of time, but this was an awesome episode. Shorter one, but awesome. And just droplet after droplet of knowledge and quotes. And I love it. I'm a big quote guy myself, but why don't you tell the audience where people can find you? You talk about mentors. Here's a mentor for you. Where can people find you?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram, Andy_Neary. I do a lot of work on LinkedIn, Andy Neary. I've got my website, andyneary.com. And then you mentioned my Bullpen Sessions podcast. Look for the Bullpen Sessions podcast on Apple and Spotify.
Yeah, he does interview a lot of high name professional athletes on that. So that's definitely something to check out, and the book on Amazon. But Andy, thanks so much for being here. This was an awesome episode.
Love the conversation, guys. Thank you.
Andy, you're amazing. Keep it going.
Likewise.
That's going to do it for this edition of Win Championship Trades for Life. For JB Spizzo, Andy Nero, I'm Neary. Nero's not a bad name to be associated with sometimes. I'm Lee Elias. Make sure you check out this episode and all the other ones on whatever podcast server you listen to, or check us out at pivotalmomentsmedia.com on our continued mission to break the stigma behind mental fitness. We'll talk to you next time. Have a great day, everybody.